Next story I wanted to talk about is about a guy named Lance Wallnau. Now, I've talked about this guy a few times before, but he had some interesting things to say recently about the Don't Say Gay bill. I want to talk about the Don't Say Gay bill and what it is and what Lance Wallnau had to say about it, but before we do, I want to catch you up on who this guy is. Just in case you haven't heard of him before, I'll give you a little bit of background on him. This clip came out early January 2022. He is a deep Trump lover, deep Trump supporter, and he always has been. But he's not just a Trump supporter. He seems to have almost seamlessly worked Trump into his theology. And he's not just a regular old Christian. He's a Christian nationalist, a dominionist, and he goes a step beyond dominionist into something called Seven Mountains Dominionism. We'll get into it in a minute. For the moment, let me show you how he feels about Donald Trump. This is a clip of Lance Wallnau literally praying over a cardboard cutout of Donald Trump.
I pray for this man. Lord, I pray you take the smell of smoke, the disappointment, the bitterness, the anger, the feeling of betrayal and loss. That it must be a terrible thing, Lord, to actually feel as though you've been stolen an election and that the nation that you love is suffering with it.
Why does he have that? Why does he have this cardboard cutout of Donald Trump in his house? That is so weird. You know what's even weirder than that, though? This is mid-January 2022. That last one was early January 2022. Check this one out.
These people live in paranoid land.
Talking about anybody to the left of him, of course.
They're not sane like us. They're not rational like us and Mike Lindell.
Dude's got a cardboard cutout of Mike Lindell, too. How many cardboard cutouts does he have? This is weird. Seriously, why does he have all these cardboard cutouts, man? Does he have a cardboard cutout of Kat Kerr over there, too?
By the way, I've ordered a lot of Mike Lindell slippers and a lot of Mike Lindell bathrobes and a lot of Mike Lindell towels for Christmas. My Pillow, use the code Lance. You can get 50 to 60% off. I'm wearing Mike's slippers as I speak. I love Mike Lindell. He's one of the more rational parts of our army.
Okay, rational is not the word that I would use to describe this guy, but to each their own, I suppose. Anyway, let's get back on track. That was strange. Let me show you what this guy thinks of his theology, or let me show you how he describes his own theology. Check this out. This is early March 2022, so it's pretty recent.
Lord, I pray that you will raise up spirit-inspired leaders of the populist movement, that even in America, the Christian populace would begin to rise up to restore the nation. Christian nationalists that love America.
Christian nationalists that love America. The dude is hoping that Christian nationalists will win elections. He is a self-described Christian nationalist. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that term. I'm sure a lot of you are, but just in case there are a couple who aren't. A Christian nationalist is somebody who believes that the United States should be occupied only by Christians and nobody else. Muslims, atheists, Buddhists, they should all get out. The more mild Christian nationalists want to deport them to another country. The more extreme ones want to find another way of getting rid of atheists from the country. The Christian nationalist ideology, the Christian nationalist ideals are disturbing. And this guy is a self-described Christian nationalist.
Christian nationalists that love America and that are sane and rational and want to see America not destroyed by the globalists. I pray that you raise up a church that is so powerful and so disruptive to the agendas of these elites that some too has to happen. Why do the heathen rage and the rulers imagine a vain thing?
This dude is disturbing on new levels. He's not just a Christian nationalist, though. He's a special brand of Christian nationalist called dominionist. I've talked about dominionism before. It comes with 3 key points. So I wanted to talk about these 3 key points to dominionism, and then we'll get into how Lance Wallnau applies these points, because it's relevant. It's important. So the first point to being a dominionist, dominionists celebrate Christian nationalism, as we just heard him doing, in that they believe that the U.S. once was and should once again be a Christian nation. In this way, they deny the Enlightenment roots of American democracy. Here's point 2. Dominionists promote religious supremacy insofar as they generally don't respect the equality of other religions or even other versions of Christianity. That's right. If you are Methodist, if you're Baptist, if you're Catholic, you don't fit into the worldview that Lance Wallnau has. You think it wouldn't be so bad living in a Christian nation because you're a Christian? Trust me, the Christian nation that Lance Wallnau intends to and is working towards setting up, you don't want to live in, Christian or not. And here's point 3. Dominionists endorse theocratic visions insofar as they believe the Ten Commandments or biblical law should be the foundation of American law, and the U.S. Constitution should be seen as a vehicle for implementing biblical principles. That one's really the key out of the 3, I think. The idea that the Constitution should enforce biblical values. Some of the more extreme dominionists, like Johnny Enlow, believe that we should just completely replace the Constitution with the old law from the Old Testament, like the 10 Commandments and then the other 600 and however many there were in the old law. The 10 Commandments were just the first 10. I think there are like a total of 613 old laws or something like that. They believe that we should replace the U.S. Constitution with the old 613 or however many laws there were in the Old Testament. That's what a dominionist is. But Lance Wallnau goes a step beyond traditional dominionist. He's what we call a Seven Mountains dominionist. And in this clip, he explains what a Seven Mountains dominionist is. This is actually a new clip, early March 2022. He's drawn 7 mountains or whatever, just zigzags on this whiteboard. And he's about to describe the idea behind Seven Mountains dominionism. Listen to this.
3% of the population, roughly 3 to 4% of the population, are radical leftist elites. 30% of the population are evangelical born-again Christians that are inclined to go towards Pentecostal language. I mean, we're really out there. 30% against 3%, but they neutralize the church because they're also in religion.
Okay, now he's going to go through these 7 key areas of society and talk about how Christians should control them. He wants to get extremist evangelicals who intend to replace the U.S. Constitution with the 613 old laws from the Old Testament or however many. And he needs evangelical extremists at the top of religion. That's his first one. He doesn't need to convert everybody in the United States to be evangelical. He doesn't need that to have a Christian nation. What he needs is to get people into leadership positions in these 7 key areas of society. First one is religion.
They neutralize the church because they're also in religion. They changed the definition of marriage, so they've taken over family.
Religion and family.
They've totally taken over academia, so the education institutions are teaching leftist theology or leftist ideology and silencing conservatives. They're controlling government right.
So government, education, religion, family. He wants to get evangelical extremist leaders into leadership positions that can control or manipulate how these things are regulated or how they're controlled or whatever else.
Controlling government right now. They've taken over legacy media, Hollywood, entertainment, and arts, and now they've got Wall Street.
Religion, family, education, government, military, media.
And now they've got Wall Street.
And the economic system. He wants to get evangelical extremist leaders at the top of each of those mountains, thus 7 mountains dominionist. He believes that if he can get people to the top leadership positions in every one of those areas, we don't need to convert any more people. He can basically create a propaganda system that will convert people or force them out, one or the other.
This is 3%. 30% of the population is Christian. How is it that 30% are dominated by 3%? They have a worldview for bringing their kingdom here now. We're told to pray thy kingdom come, but we put it off to the second coming.
There it is.
We put it off. They are organized, and we are not. So, God says, I'm going to send you a revival. And we're praying for revival. And as we pray for revival, we think, well, watch what happens. That 30 will become 50%. It doesn't matter, because the guards in the prison control what goes on with the inmates. You could have 75%. And if they control those high places, you still are in suppression, because that's the story of history. So it's not just in having more. We certainly want souls. In eternity, that's the most important thing. And this is, Mario, where a lot of people get confused. Is it the kingdom more important? Isn't Jesus more important? Isn't souls more important? Of course, this isn't either or. It's both and. We want souls and we want nations. Jesus was promised nations for his inheritance, not just churches.
Did you catch that at the end? We want nations. He wants to control nations this way. This is his plan. He wants to get his religious extremists, his zealots, into position of power, into a position of control in these 7 areas: economy, military, government, arts and media, education, family, and religion. I mean, we should be kind of concerned about this guy. We should definitely be concerned about what he's up to right now. Early November 2021, he started putting out this weird framing of the LGBT community. I wanted to listen to this because it's like a recurring theme with him. It's something that I've noticed cropping up a lot, especially recently. So let's listen to this podcast clip. It's just like a minute long or something like that, from early November 2021. And then we're going to listen to his most recent framing of the LGBT community. Check this out. Just a little bit of lead up here. He's on a podcast episode with a co-host.
This progressive fundamentalism is a religion. It's got its own false confessions. You have to make the confession. You can't just love your neighbor who might deal with homosexuality like you would love your neighbor who might be dealing with adultery or theft or something like that, but you have to celebrate it. If you don't make the confession, you're sinning, and you deserve to have all the consequences.
Years ago, I was
deal with. Don't you love it how they frame this? Also, if you notice, they keep trying to frame things that they don't like as religions. I think the reason for that is twofold. The first reason that they want to frame it as a religion is so that they can call you a heretic if you support the LGBT community. Claim that you are part of another religious group. You can't both love God and love people in the LGBT community simultaneously. That's why they frame it that way, at least partly. And I think that the second reason that they frame it this way is because if they can make it into a religion, the next logical step that they can bring their audience to is that it's a cult. Not that the things are necessarily connected. Scientology, for example, isn't a religious cult. It's a psychology cult. And they only use religion for what they can get out of it, like tax-exempt status, for example. Heaven's Gate had religious undertones to it, but it was a UFO cult. I mean, there are a lot of cults out there that are not religious, not even a little bit, some of them. Religion does not have to be a part of the equation when you're dealing with cults, but a lot of people view it that way. They feel like there's one short leap from religion to cult, and I think that's one of the reasons why they frame it the way that they do. Anyway, let's keep listening. This is Lance Wellknow now.
Have all the
Years ago, I
you.
was confronted by an HR director of a major corporation, and I realized that it's the HR departments, the hiring HR departments in the corporations that were targeted by the homosexual lobby at that point, the homosexual movement, in order to get gay representatives in the HR departments, because they would hire. Okay, 1 second. So he's saying he believes that gay lobbies are out there trying to hire gay people to work in HR? In the HR departments, because they would hire their own woke people, and they would, in a sense, vet and get rid of the conservatives or evangelicals. So,
in what sense? Can you give me more information on this? Can you give me any proof at all of this? I don't believe you. Simple as that. You're making a claim, and I reject that claim. That's ridiculous. What are you even talking about? That would actually probably be reason for a lawsuit if that were actually happening. You can't discriminate against people. And really, that's the basis of this whole argument, isn't it? We don't want to be discriminated against. We're trying to prevent discrimination. Simple as that. We don't want to be fired for being gay. We don't want to be hated or mistreated or harassed or bullied or any of that stuff. That's all we have ever asked. You can try to twist this around to make it into something else. That is all we've ever wanted. We have only ever wanted to be treated as equals and nothing more and nothing less. But Lance Wallnau wants to twist it around to turn this into a persecution thing against him.
Talked to a guy who this was actually what he was doing in a major corporation. Because I was talking like a Christian. I said, well, Christians are, we're blessed are the peacemakers. We're not trying to hurt anybody. And
simply not true. Lance Wallnau, specifically Lance Wallnau, he has a vested interest in removing the existence of anybody who is not a born-again Christian from the United States. Christian nationalist, remember? Celebrates the fact that he's a Christian nationalist. He doesn't want gay people in this country. He can try to twist it around any way he wants, but we've listened to the clips from him. We know exactly what he believes. Go ahead and twist it around for us, Lance.
Not trying to hurt anybody. And he said, you don't get it. It was a contempt and anger.
I bet. There was contempt and anger in this gay person's voice.
He said, you don't get it. We don't want your acceptance. Who are you to accept us? You will affirm us. Do you know what that means? You are going to embrace us, affirm us, celebrate us. You're going to bow to the realization that we are legitimate and you cannot reject us. Even if your religion disapproves of homosexuality, you're going to change that.
That is the least realistic story I have heard in my life, I think. I can't think of a single less realistic story that I have ever heard. I don't believe that for a second. It doesn't sound like something that I have ever heard. And believe me, I've been involved in this community for a long time. Just treat us like everybody else. That's it. That's all we've ever wanted.
And I realized this is not what I thought it was. By the way, this doesn't represent all gays. But unfortunately, it's kind of like moderate Muslims. They exert no influence when it comes to terrorism.
Wow. He just compared the LGBT community to Muslims. That is what he just did. That's how he views the movement. I just want to put that on record. I want to make sure we're all fully aware of how Lance Wallnau views things before moving on to the next clip. Before we get there, this clip came out late March 2022. This was Lance Wallnau talking about the Don't Say Gay bill. But before we actually get there, I wanted to read just a little bit about the Don't Say Gay bill in case you're watching this 5 years in the future or in case you haven't really been following this closely. This is on the New York Times. The title is Opponents Call It the Don't Say Gay Bill. Here's what it says. The Florida bill limits what educators can say about gender and sexuality and could affect mental health services for all students. This is by Dana Goldstein, written March 18th, 2022. Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida is expected to sign House Bill 1557, which supporters call the Parental Rights in Education bill, but the opponents refer to it as the Don't Say Gay bill. It's become a national lightning rod in recent weeks, with President Biden calling the legislation hateful. Meanwhile, many conservatives have argued the bill is limited in scope and has been misrepresented by its critics. Here are key passages in the bill. This is what we should be paying attention to here. Instruction on gender and sexuality would be constrained in all grades. Schools would be required to notify parents when children receive mental, emotional, or physical health services unless educators believe there's a risk of abuse, abandonment, or neglect. Parents would have the right to opt their children out of counseling and health services. Parents could sue schools for violating the vaguely written bill, and districts would have to cover the costs. Florida would rewrite school counseling standards. I would say the key points here is it's erasing mental health protections for kids, and it's erasing privacy protections for kids. Instruction on gender and sexuality would be constrained in all grades. Let's just take a quick sneak peek at a couple of these sections. This is what the New York Times wrote about the instruction on gender and sexuality would be constrained in all grades part. This is the sentence that has earned the bill the "Don't Say Gay" nickname. The language is vague and subject to interpretation. The preamble of the bill further muddles matters. It prohibits not only instruction around gender identity and sexual orientation, but also classroom discussion of these topics. Classroom instruction could mean eliminating books in the classroom with LGBTQ characters or historical figures. No classroom discussion is a broad phrase and could mean that teachers with a student with gay parents should not talk about those families with the entire class. If you think that's a stretch, it's not. This is the type of thing that the Republican Party wants right now in the United States. This is what they're aiming for. This is the next section of concern. Schools would be required to notify parents when children receive mental, emotional, or physical health services unless educators believe there's a risk of abuse, abandonment, or neglect. This parental notification requirement appears to apply to any student regardless of age or circumstances. The student could be seeking health services for gender issues, sexuality, depression, substance use, a parental divorce, or any other challenge. Still, this bill was written in large part because activists are worried about how schools respond to students who question their gender identity. They argue that schools should not affirm children who say they are trans if it means contradicting their parents. It's unclear how strictly schools would follow the directive to inform parents of every change in a student's health services. For example, if a child casually reaches out to a counselor to discuss stress about grades and in conversation also brings up other mental health concerns, would parents be contacted? According to the bill, I think the answer is yes. A section of the bill allows school staff to skip informing parents if there is risk of abuse, abandonment, or neglect. Counselors often wrestle with how to balance students' desire for confidentiality with the need to keep families informed about their children's well-being, but they argue that a blanket requirement for parental disclosure in all but the most extreme circumstances could lead students to approach counselors less frequently, degrading relationships that can be some of the most trusting in students' lives. Yeah, in my opinion, this entire bill is just one more way to erode rights, to erode privacy, which is something the Republican Party seems to have a vested interest in doing right now. So anyways, with that in mind, now that we have kind of the key ideas of the bill down, I mean, we could have gone a little bit further, but let's watch the next clip. Lance Wallnau, late March 2022, talking about the Don't Say Gay bill. Check this out.
The media's calling it the Don't Say Gay Act bill. And DeSantis called him out for it the other day. He really went after a reporter who talked about that. He said, no. We're talking about kindergarten to third grade. We need to be talking about that right now.
That's not in the bill. I didn't see anything about that. From what I can tell, it was a K-12 thing. Is that just fabricated propaganda they're spreading once again? I mean, that's what they're best at.
We're talking about kindergarten to third grade. We need to be talking about that right now.
This is where you could push back and say these are the must-be gay activists.
Yeah.
You must convert. You must be gay. Yeah. You must accept it. You must embrace it. You must affirm it. You're not allowed to reject it. If you do, you should be deplatformed and all your money should be taken from you.
Or you could just not say anything. I mean, you don't have to bring this subject up. You don't have to address this. You don't have to attack people for some attribute about them. You don't have to hurt people. You can just not hurt people, just like that. Boom. Just not say something that is hateful and derogatory and damaging. They can't manage to just keep to themselves and not hurt people. It's part of their ideology. It's part of their religion. Lance Wallnau's specifically. It's part of his religion to hurt people. That's what it's all about for him. So he feels persecuted when he's not allowed to do that anymore. And that's why he's lashing out. That is why he's calling the LGBT lobby or whatever terrorists. That's why he's doing that. That's why he's calling them that. Because he feels persecuted when he doesn't feel comfortable attacking them anymore. Absolutely grotesque.
That's a religion, folks.
Yeah.
That's as bad as the Taliban.
Yeah.
You got the trans Taliban.
Once again, another comparison to the Taliban. Isn't that fascinating? When there's a movement that he doesn't like, he always ties it to some religious qualities in some way. He always wants to make it out like it's a religion. So if you support it, you are supporting heresy. That is his whole tactic. and it is absolutely grotesque. Lance Wallnau is a very disturbing individual, and we should definitely be keeping an eye on this guy.